It happened in an instant, louder than the cameras, sharper than the lights, more cutting than the questions flying around the room. Donald Trump's voice broke through the air like a hammer. "Get out," he barked, his finger jabbing, his tone carrying the same sneer that had once electrified his rallies. The audience froze. Reporters who had come prepared for another night of soundbites suddenly realized they were witnessing something else entirely. Nobody expected the night to implode like this. And yet across from him, Barack Obama didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. Where Trump's body coiled with agitation, Obama's posture was steady, composed, almost surgical in its calm. That contrast, the storm against the stillness, cast the entire room in cinematic tension. The microphones crackled, the crowd shifted, and the silence after Trump's shout was deafening. It wasn't just a political outburst. It was a rupture, the kind that splits a moment in two, before and after. The cameras zoomed in, hungry for every twitch, every breath. Trump leaned forward, jaw tight, voice booming again as if sheer volume could erase the unease now circling the room. His words hung heavy, designed to dominate. But next to him sat the man who had already weathered every insult, every caricature, every attempt to diminish him. Obama didn't need to raise his voice. His silence alone began to bend the room's energy back toward him. Gasps from the audience rippled across the hall. Some hands flew to mouths, others reached for phones, already typing what would become the first wave of reactions. Even before Obama spoke, America knew something was about to unfold. The tension was not just between two men, it was between two visions of what leadership means: the rage of entitlement against the grace of restraint. Every eye locked on Obama, waiting. The lights seemed to brighten. The hum of live broadcast equipment filled the silence, and time itself appeared to stretch. The weight of history pressed down on the moment, and even Trump's scowl seemed to betray a flicker of uncertainty. But then Obama moved. Slowly, deliberately, he leaned into the microphone, and what he said next didn't just silence Trump, it stunned the entire country. To understand why this clash mattered, you have to step back from the shock of that single moment and see the larger picture. This wasn't just another exchange of barbs on a stage, not just another headline about political rivals taking swipes at one another. No, this was something deeper, something heavier. It was about what America has been wrestling with for years: truth versus distortion, dignity versus disruption, and the kind of leadership that will define a generation. Donald Trump had built his reputation on dominating rooms with volume, with bravado, with a brand of politics that turned conflict into currency. To his supporters, that brashness looked like strength. To his critics, it looked like chaos wearing a suit. He thrived on spectacle, and every time he barked over a question or steamrolled an opponent, he believed he was proving his power. But across from him sat a figure cut from an entirely different cloth. Barack Obama wasn't on that stage to shout. He wasn't there to trade insult for insult. His presence was a reminder of a time when calm persuasion and steady words could move millions. And for millions watching, he represented more than just a former president. He represented identity, possibility, and a vision of America rooted in inclusion rather than division. That's what made the stakes so high. It wasn't just Trump versus Obama. It was a mirror held up to the nation. Every insult carried the weight of cultural tension. Every pause carried the breath of history. For African Americans, immigrants, young people watching from their dorm rooms, parents watching from their kitchens, this moment was a test of whether dignity still had a place in America's bloodstream. And as the cameras rolled, the symbolism became impossible to ignore. The loud, combative spin master, who had made a career out of bending facts and bending the truth, versus the dignified statesman who had built his career on patience, principle, and the power of words. The contrast was cinematic, almost archetypal. The disruptor versus the reconciler, the chaos versus the calm. The audience knew it too. You could feel the air tighten as people realized they weren't just watching an argument. They were watching a collision of eras. Social media had already begun buzzing. This feels historic. This is bigger than politics. The phones in the audience lit up like fireflies in the dark. Clips were already being clipped, tweets already flying, hashtags already taking shape, because here was the truth. This was not just another sparring match. It was not just another dramatic outburst that would vanish with tomorrow's news cycle. No, this was the moment America tuned in, leaned forward, and held its breath. Something was about to break wide open. And yet, as sharp as the tension had become, the drama was only beginning. The confrontation hadn't reached its peak. Donald Trump didn't become a household name by whispering. From the skyscrapers of Manhattan to the neon-lit stages of reality television, his persona was forged in volume, spectacle, and relentless self-promotion. Every handshake, every tweet, every public appearance was designed to assert dominance, to bend attention toward himself. To his supporters, it was bravado. To his critics, it was a study in overcompensation. But one thing was undeniable. Trump understood how to command a room. Long before his presidency, he had learned to thrive in environments where charisma and aggression outweighed nuance and detail. Boardrooms and media appearances became his proving grounds, places where he could shape narratives and make people follow his rhythm. Interrupt, exaggerate, dominate, this was the playbook, and he executed it flawlessly. Whether negotiating billion-dollar deals or critiquing competitors on national television, when he entered politics, Trump brought the same tactics to a different arena. The debates, the press briefings, the rallies, they were stages for the same performance he had honed for decades. He transformed shouting into strategy, insults into policy framing, and volume into power. Alternative facts, a phrase now infamous, became a symbol of his willingness to bend reality to fit his narrative. Whether defending policy missteps or attacking opponents, Trump rarely paused to consider subtlety. He simply amplified, repeated, and relied on the spectacle to drown dissent. Yet woven into this approach were contradictions that only became more visible over time. He positioned himself as a champion of truth while frequently distorting it. He celebrated strength while displaying insecurity when confronted. He preached loyalty while cultivating a network of chaos, designed to keep others off balance. His bravado often overshadowed substance, creating a persona as combustible as it was captivating. Trump's television appearances, especially during debates and interviews, became legendary. His tactics were aggressive, almost theatrical. He spoke over moderators, interrupted opponents, mocked their statements, and used every trick in the book to control the narrative. For years, this method worked. It left his rivals frustrated and audiences divided, but it built an aura of invincibility. People came to expect the spectacle. Many even admired it. But with every performance, the cracks began to show. The louder Trump grew, the more fragile his facade appeared. His reliance on chaos to assert control meant that any disruption, a poised opponent, a steady rebuttal, a calm refusal to be intimidated could unravel the act entirely. What had once been a strength, his ability to dominate a room, now contained the seeds of vulnerability. In the confrontation with Barack Obama, all of these elements came into focus. The shouting, the finger-pointing, the bluster, it was classic Trump. Yet across from him sat a man who had faced scrutiny far greater than any soundbite or insult, someone who had cultivated a reputation built not on chaos, but on dignity, intelligence, and patience. The contrast was stark, the loud, reactionary showman versus the composed, deliberate statesman. The villain archetype was complete. Trump embodied arrogance, loudness, and manipulation. He had become the storm, the unyielding force of disruption, convinced that volume equaled victory, but history, and every calculated opponent, would remind him the louder he became, the closer he came to his own undoing. Before the world saw him lean forward, calm and measured, in that tense confrontation with Donald Trump, Barack Obama had spent a lifetime preparing for moments that demanded not just intellect, but unwavering composure. His story didn't begin in the spotlight of the White House, but in the neighborhoods, classrooms, and community halls that shaped his understanding of America. From Chicago's South Side to Harvard Law School, he absorbed the lessons of resilience, empathy, and the power of words carried with integrity. Obama's path was defined by perseverance. The early years of his career were spent as a community organizer, tackling systemic problems that had long been ignored. He witnessed firsthand the struggles of families pushed to the margins, of students denied opportunities, of communities left behind by policies designed without their input. These experiences weren't abstract, they were personal. They forged in him a philosophy. That change required patience, principle, and the ability to navigate conflict without compromising values. His rise to the Senate, and eventually to the presidency, was a testament to strategic vision and relentless preparation. Every speech, every policy proposal, every debate was informed by the understanding that leadership required more than charisma. It required moral clarity. He learned to listen before responding, to weigh words with care, and to speak in a way that elevated discussion rather than drowned it out. Yet even with all his accomplishments, Obama's power lay not in his titles or accolades but in his temperament. His calm in the face of provocation, his ability to disarm tension with poise, became his signature strength. He had faced relentless attacks from opponents and media alike, and each encounter reinforced a simple truth. Composure is a weapon more precise than rage. This was especially evident in his post-presidency years, where he continued to serve as a moral compass in turbulent political waters. While others engaged in shouting matches and sensationalist tactics, Obama chose deliberate engagement. He measured his words for maximum effect, understanding that impact often required restraint, not volume. This approach earned him respect across ideological lines, and for many, admiration that transcended politics. For the public watching the Trump confrontation, Obama represented something larger than himself. He embodied dignity, intellect, and the capacity to rise above chaos. He was a figure who validated the experiences of those who had been overlooked, dismissed, or belittled. Young people, minorities, immigrants, and anyone who had ever been told their voice didn't matter could see in him proof that grace under pressure is a form of strength. And yet all of this preparation, the years of advocacy, law, teaching, and leadership, was about to collide with one of the most high-stakes, visible tests of his post-presidency. Across from him sat a man who had built an entire career on disruption, on yelling over everyone else, on bending the room to his will. The challenge wasn't theoretical. It was immediate, intense, and broadcast to millions in real time. Obama had faced crises, scandals, and opposition before, but this was different. This was spectacle designed to provoke, to dominate, to test whether composure could withstand raw aggression on a stage designed for chaos. For those watching, it was more than politics. It was a lesson in the enduring power of dignity, a demonstration that calm, deliberate truth can cut through noise in ways that rage never can. And yet, all of that preparation was about to collide with the fiercest test of his post-presidency. The moment was already charged, but as the cameras rolled and the nation leaned in, the air in the studio seemed to tighten. Trump's voice surged, sharp and cutting, a barrage of interruptions and dismissive quips. He leaned forward, gesturing forcefully, his face flushed with the energy of confrontation. "You don't belong here!" he barked at one point, his tone less an argument and more a command, as if sheer volume could erase legitimacy. Obama didn't flinch. His eyes stayed locked, his posture unmoved, a quiet counterpoint to Trump's storm. Every time Trump cut across his words, Obama paused, not in weakness, but in calculated restraint. His silence became louder than Trump's shouting. The tension in the studio was palpable, the audience caught between outrage and fascination. Each exchange pushed the atmosphere closer to chaos. Trump, sensing that his interruptions weren't rattling his opponent, doubled down. His words came faster, harsher. He mocked Obama's policies, questioned his legacy, even scoffed at his intelligence. The volume rose, drowning out the moderator's attempts to regain order. To some, it felt less like a debate and more like a spectacle of raw aggression, a performance meant to dominate rather than discuss. But Obama's strategy was different. Where Trump charged forward recklessly, Obama moved with precision. He let Trump's interruptions pile up, each one a brick in the wall of arrogance that the audience could see being built in real time. And when he did speak, his words cut through the noise like a scalpel. Calm, firm, deliberate. Each phrase reminded the room that leadership wasn't about who shouted the loudest, it was about who commanded, respect without asking for it. The audience reacted in real time. Gasps punctuated Trump's more outrageous outbursts, while murmurs of approval rippled when Obama delivered measured rebuttals. Social media feeds lit up, the debate spilling beyond the walls of the studio into living rooms and smartphones across the country. Viewers debated in real time. Was Trump's aggression strength or desperation? Was Obama's composure resilience or the calm before an explosive response? The moderator's attempts to restore balance failed repeatedly as Trump seized every pause to interject. Yet even in the near chaos, a narrative was forming. The more Trump yelled, the more dignified Obama appeared. The more insults flew, the more anticipation built for the moment when the calm statesman would finally decide to strike back. And then, after one particularly sharp interruption, something shifted. Obama leaned forward slightly, his gaze steady, his expression unchanged. The studio grew quieter, the audience sensing a threshold had been reached. He had allowed Trump to dominate the stage long enough. The patience, the restraint, the deliberate pauses, it was all leading to this moment. And then, Obama decided enough was enough. The studio lights seemed brighter, the silence heavier, as Barack Obama finally leaned into the microphone. For minutes, Trump had stormed through the debate like a man possessed, interrupting, shouting, throwing every insult in his arsenal. But now Obama shifted ever so slightly in his chair, and it was as though the entire room knew the counterattack was about to begin. He started softly, his voice measured, calm, deliberate. "You know, Donald," he said, with that trademark cadence that rolled like a wave, "the volume of your words doesn't make them true." The line landed like a jolt. The audience gasped, a mix of relief and anticipation flooding the air. Trump smirked and tried to cut in, but Obama lifted a hand, not aggressively, but with the kind of quiet authority that said, "Wait." The pause was devastating. Trump opened his mouth, then shut it again, unsure of how to push past silence that wasn't weakness but power. Obama continued, his eyes fixed, his words sharpened into steel. "For years you've tried to rewrite reality with shouting. You've mocked, you've belittled, you've claimed your own set of facts. But facts don't vanish because you yell over them. Truth doesn't disappear because it makes you uncomfortable." The weight of his words seemed to slow the room itself. Viewers at home leaned forward, their social media feeds already ablaze with clips of that single line. Inside the studio, people shifted in their seats, stunned not by volume but by the precision of the delivery. Trump tried again, raising his voice to dismiss Obama as weak, but this time his words stumbled. His eyes darted, his timing faltered. The more he pushed, the less control he seemed to have over the narrative. And Obama, unshaken, pressed further. "You yelled at me to get out," Obama said, pausing just long enough for the sting of Trump's earlier outburst to settle. "But here's the thing. I didn't just walk into this room today. I walked into the White House because millions of Americans, black, white, Latino, Asian, Native, immigrant, chose hope over fear. They chose unity over division. They chose dignity over rage. So the truth is, Donald, you don't get to decide who belongs in America. The American people already decided." The words hit like thunder. The audience erupted, gasps, applause, a roar of energy that the cameras couldn't fully contain. Trump's jaw tightened, his face flushed, but his voice faltered when he tried to bark back. The moment was slipping away from him, and Obama wasn't finished. His voice steadied into a crescendo, each sentence layered with conviction. "You see, leadership isn't about who can shout the loudest in the room. It's about who can stand tallest when the room is shouting at them. It's about telling the truth even when lies are easier. It's about serving something bigger than yourself." He paused again, and the silence was cinematic. Trump's bluster had nowhere to land. The contrast was glaring, one man unhinged, the other unshaken. And then came the line that would travel across the world in clips, memes, hashtags, and headlines. "If you think yelling will erase history, then you've already lost. Because history doesn't belong to the loudest voice. It belongs to the truest one." The studio froze for half a beat before exploding into chaos. Applause, shouts of support, the sound of history being etched in real time. Trump fumbled for words, his usual confidence slipping into visible frustration. His interruptions no longer felt commanding. They felt desperate. Every attempt to regain control only underscored his unraveling. Social media was already on fire. The reply heard around the world, one tweet read within seconds. Live chat feeds erupted with emojis, mic drop moment, and Obama just ended him. Clips circulated instantly, replayed frame by frame, highlighting Obama's calm gaze, Trump's faltering expression, the exact second the power dynamic flipped. The tension that had built over the course of the night, released in a collective recognition. The shouting had finally been silenced, not by louder noise but by sharper truth. Viewers at home described the moment as cathartic, even cinematic. Parents told their kids to remember where they were watching it. Commentators whispered, "We just saw a turning point." And as the noise in the studio settled, the image was seared into memory, Trump glaring, rattled and restless, while Obama leaned back in his chair, composed, almost serene. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. It was the kind of exchange that didn't just end an argument, it defined it. The hero had landed the blow without raising his voice. The villain, once dominant, was suddenly exposed as fragile. But the true explosion, the tidal wave of reaction, didn't happen in the studio. It was about to happen online. The moment Obama delivered his final line, history doesn't belong to the loudest voice. It belongs to the truest one. The studio might as well have turned into a launch pad. The blast radius of his words traveled faster than the speed of sound, faster than the applause could even die down. Within minutes, the world outside that debate hall was already vibrating with reaction. Twitter, or X, as some were still awkwardly calling it, lit up like a stadium on championship night. Hashtags began to trend instantly. Obama mic drop. Truth over noise and get out gate. Commentators couldn't type fast enough. Screenshots of Trump's faltering expression ricocheted across timelines, paired with Obama's calm, unwavering gaze. The narrative was clear. One man had shouted himself into exhaustion, and the other had spoken a truth so sharp it sliced through the chaos. On TikTok, the moment became a loop. Clips of Obama's poised delivery were set to music, remixed with cinematic sound effects, replayed with captions like "the silence that ended Trump." Teens, college students, even middle-aged parents were reposting the video, with commentary, "This is what leadership looks like." Some users filmed themselves watching the clip for the first time, their jaws dropping, their eyes wide, mouths covering in disbelief. Reaction videos that themselves went viral. Instagram Reels amplified the drama with dramatic filters, slow-motion zooms and captions that read like poetry. Calm defeated chaos. Memes exploded, Trump yelling with comic book speech bubbles while Obama's measured reply was written in bold, elegant text. One image compared Trump to a storm raging against a lighthouse, with the tagline, "Guess who's still standing?" But it wasn't just memes and hashtags. Celebrities chimed in almost immediately. Musicians, actors, athletes, even rivals from Obama's past weighed in. "That's how it's done," one A-list actor tweeted. A Grammy-winning singer wrote, "Words matter. Dignity matters." Tonight, the world saw it. Even some of Trump's usual defenders were unusually quiet, their silence amplifying the sense that a cultural tide had turned. Cable news caught the wave and turned it into a tsunami. Commentators dissected the body language, the tone, the timing. "Look at Obama's pause," one analyst said, replaying the clip in slow motion. "That's discipline. That's strategy. That's a man in control of the room." Another noted Trump's visible discomfort. The eyes darting, the hesitation, that's not confidence. That's panic. And for ordinary Americans, the moment became personal. Teachers played the clip in classrooms as an example of how to handle confrontation. Parents sent it to their kids with notes like, "This is how you deal with bullies." Immigrants shared it proudly on Facebook and WhatsApp groups, framing it as proof that calm truth can still win in a world that often feels dominated by anger. The ripple effect grew. Pollsters noted an overnight surge in positive sentiment toward Obama, even among independents who had grown cynical about politics. Hashtags turned into movements with slogans like "Dignity wins" trending for days. The moment wasn't just a clapback, it was a cultural reset. And meanwhile, Trump, his reaction became fodder for endless mockery. Clips of him stammering, scowling, and flailing in response spread like wildfire. Late-night hosts roasted him mercilessly. Comedians turned the meltdown into sketches, and social media dubbed it the shout that backfired. By the end of the week, it was clear. Obama's calm reply had not only silenced Trump in the moment, it had redrawn the battlefield of perception. Trump had wanted a spectacle, but the spectacle had turned against him. Obama had wanted dignity, and dignity had gone viral. The aftershocks of that night rippled far beyond one debate. For millions, it wasn't just about Trump or Obama. It was about what America chooses to elevate. Chaos or calm, fear or truth, shouting or history. And as the noise online built into a roar, one thing became clear. The story was no longer about the insult that had sparked the fire. It was about the reply that turned it into an inferno. But while social media erupted in applause, the real test lay ahead. Could this moment be more than a viral clip? Could it carry the weight of a lesson that would outlast the news cycle? When the storm of reactions finally began to quiet, when the hashtags had settled into the fabric of the internet, What remained was not just a clip, not just a meme, it was a message. Obama's response had transcended the chaos of a single night. It had become a parable, a reminder that in the face of rage and arrogance, calm truth can still win. This was the resolution of a clash that had begun as theater, but ended as testimony. Trump had wanted to command the stage with volume, with intimidation, with a show of dominance, yet his voice, raised so high, collapsed under its own weight. Obama, in contrast, reminded the nation that restraint is not weakness, it is mastery. By refusing to shout back, he proved that dignity has its own thunder. In living rooms across America, the lesson sank in. Parents pointed to Obama's composure as an example for their children. Teachers held it up as a blueprint for respectful discourse. Immigrant families, long accustomed to hearing their accents mocked or their presence questioned, felt seen in his calm rejection of "get out." It was more than politics, it was validation. It was the reassurance that belonging is not up for debate when truth stands its ground. And beyond the immediacy of the moment, the symbolism cut even deeper. Here was a former president, once caricatured, once doubted, reminding the nation why he had inspired so many in the first place. It wasn't policy details or fiery slogans that resonated. It was the core belief that leadership is about lifting others, not tearing them down. That words, when chosen carefully, can echo far louder than shouts. This moment offered a mirror to America. On one side stood Trump, embodying the politics of fury, brash, loud, fueled by disdain. On the other stood Obama, embodying the politics of steadiness, calm, deliberate, rooted in values that outlast any single news cycle. And the country watching was asked to choose, not just between two men, but between two visions of what it means to lead, to argue, to represent. For progressives, the lesson felt almost poetic. Dignity had triumphed, not in a slow march, but in a single, unforgettable reply. For moderates and skeptics, it was a wake-up call. Maybe the chaos they had grown, numb to, wasn't strength at all, but noise masking insecurity. And even for some conservatives, there was a grudging recognition. Obama had played the moment like a master, and Trump had played himself into a corner. The crescendo of meaning was this: calm does not mean passive, restraint does not mean silence, and dignity, far from being fragile, can be the strongest weapon of all. Because in the end, America saw more than a fight, it saw a future. A future where shouting doesn't drown out truth, where character matters more than spectacle, where leadership is not defined by volume but by vision. That night, Obama had not just defended himself, he had defended an ideal. And as the world replayed his words over and over again, it was clear that this was more than a debate moment. It was a story to be told for years. A reminder written in real time that arrogance crumbles while dignity inspires. But even as America reflected on the lesson, one more step remained: the call to action, the invitation to turn inspiration into movement. And so we return to the title, the shout, the command, the attempt to erase a man who had already written his place in history. "Get out," Trump bellowed. But instead of being silenced, Obama answered with a reply that will be remembered long after the echoes of that yell have faded. His words were proof that in the battle between arrogance and dignity, it is dignity that endures. This was not just a viral clip. It was not just another clash on television. It was a reminder that words matter, that calm truth can stop chaos in its tracks. That history will never belong to the loudest voice in the room, but to the one who speaks with clarity, respect, and unshakable conviction. And that more than anything else is why this moment matters. Because it wasn't simply about two men. It was about us, about what kind of nation we choose to be. Will we reward shouting, or will we honor substance? Will we bow to fear, or will we rise with courage? If this moment moved you, if you believe that dignity always wins in the end, then don't let it stop here. Share this story. Pass it along to friends, to family, to anyone who needs a reminder that strength is not volume, it's vision. Subscribe to this channel, be part of this community, and help amplify the message that truth and dignity will always outlast the noise. Because the night Trump tried to shout someone out of history, America was reminded of something simple and powerful. No one can erase a legacy built on truth. And that is why Obama's reply wasn't just a moment, it was a movement.